never mind. Oh, there we go. That gave the game away a bit. Hello, I'm Izzy Lawrence, and over here, that way, there we go, is Dr. Dave Hone. There he is, all shaved and, looking smart. And we literally just decided to do this because we're really organised, because, why not? So you should hopefully be able to see us on Facebook. We are also on Twitter and also on YouTube. And hopefully through that on our Patreon as well. My goodness, it might all have gone wrong. Let's face it, it may well have done.
In which case you might be watching it later.
Exactly. But what we wanted to sort of talk about was, I've been sent this particular article a lot. So this is the article. It's the world's first complete T-Rex skeleton found locked in battle with a Triceratops. And look, there it is. Oh my goodness, look at all of the, I mean, it's nonsense because this is, I've got all my ad blocks turned off, so this doesn't, pop up with things. There we go. But this is the news, Dave. The wonderful news that they've just found the skeleton locked in battle with the Triceratops, and it's going on display.
Yeah, so the one they just found in 2006 and has been doing the round for many years, and probably isn't 100% complete or anything like, and therefore is really not the first to be anything like that complete. But
Dave, scientists have revealed the world's first ever complete T-Rex skeleton.
Have they? Well,
says.
Yeah, well, obviously I trust the Metro over my fellow professional colleagues. No, it's a really, really, really interesting specimen, and it's one of those ones which have been argued about endlessly on the internet since it first kind of hit the headlines about 4 or 5 years ago now. And as usual, it's kind of been blown out of all proportion, and I've seen enormously detailed breakdowns of exactly how important this is by people who haven't seen it and don't really know what it is. So let's start with what we kind of do know. So I should add, I have not seen this specimen. I've seen a bunch of photos of it. I have some fellow professionals who have seen it, and I've talked to them a bit about it, but I really don't know that much about it in the sense of I have not physically examined the specimen or seen hundreds and hundreds of really detailed photos. But so this is a private specimen. It's now been sold to a museum in Raleigh in North Carolina, I think it is, as part of their big revised redevelopment of a museum. It's been sold for $6 million for the pair of specimens. It clearly needs work. It's clearly been fairly heavily prepared, but it's not been completely exposed. If you wanted to mount these as actual skeletons stood up, there's a hell of a lot more work that would still need to be done. So yeah, there's the Tyrannosaur. That is, a year's work to finish getting that out of the rock and mounted on a full, with rods and an armature to have it standing up kind of thing. So, this is, don't expect to to pop over to the museum in March and see this thing. So it was privately found and excavated and prepared to the extent that it has been so far, and it was put up for auction, I want to say, in something like 2015 with a really big reserve price, and it didn't meet it. And then it just basically went back again because clearly the owners thought it was worth a ton of money and it wasn't going for the money that they wanted. I believe that reserve was $6 million. So it has effectively eventually sold for what the minimum they wanted was. I've already seen one report saying it's been donated to the museum. And I would love to donate something to a museum if they were paying me $6 million for the privilege. I think that's possibly an exaggeration that it's been donated.
Maybe it's on lease or something.
Yeah, but when it was first mooted and put up for auction, there were three distinctive things about it. We were told that the Ceratopsian was probably a new species. We were told that the Tyrannosaur was inverted commas Nanotyrannus, so the alleged pygmy Tyrannosaur, and we were told that these animals were fighting and in some way, shape or form died fighting or as a result of fighting. Based on the fact that I haven't done a big analysis, right, all of those are very questionable. First of all, I don't think anyone's looked at the ceratopsian in any great detail.
I don't think I could see it in the actual.
It doesn't even show up in the photographs because no one cares because it says T-Rex, and so that's obviously what everyone's interested in. No, that looks like the back of the. It's really small on my screen, but that looks like the back of the Tyrannosaur head.
That says I can't really zoom in much, but that's back of Tyrannosaur.
I really can't see a lot on that. It's certainly not obviously a ceratopsian. So it's probably a Triceratops. Whether or not it's a new species or even a new genus is, time will tell. But that's fine. But it's the kind of thing where I think, and unless it's very clear and very obvious, and that's been verified by some people, I think it's a bit dubious for a private dealer to go, oh, well, it's definitely a new species. It's like, well, no one's seen it yet. Yeah, trust me, it's definitely a new species. Similarly, this is a Nanotyrannus. We've talked about this before. Obviously, whoever's watching this may not have seen all what we've talked about, and there is an endless amount online that you see about this. There is an idea that there is a pygmy, dwarf, miniature Tyrannosaur species that lived alongside T-Rex called Nanotyrannus. It would have been a big animal, 2.5, 3 meters to the top of the head, but relatively small compared to T-Rex. This has been alleged. There are a number of specimens, all in private hands, that are alleged to be proof, the final nail in the coffin, whatever, that Nanotyrannus is genuine. I have not seen anything immediately obvious about this specimen in the photos that I have seen, and I can say that true of a bunch of other people who I know have seen it, including Tyrannosaur experts, that make anyone think that this is in any way, shape, or form a convincing case for Nanotyrannus. A proper analysis is obviously required. A proper full description is obviously required, but I think part of the reason that it was advertised as such is obviously that sounds sexier and more exciting than it's a juvenile T-Rex. For the record, a juvenile T-Rex would be absolutely fantastic and phenomenal and a brilliant find, and this does look very well preserved. It does look very complete. If it's 100% complete, I'll eat multiple hats. But still, it'd be a brilliant find. But I think people, and again, I've seen people already online going, finally, we're getting the Nanotyrannus we always wanted, because everyone knows that this is the Nanotyrannus and the scientists can't argue with it anymore. And now it's in a museum. We'll get the description that confirms it. I would not be holding my breath for this to be the one. And then the arguably the biggest thing is these animals were fighting. Again, I haven't seen the specimen. I haven't done anything like any technical work on it. I am perfectly prepared to accept that there could be fantastic evidence that these animals in some way, shape, or form were fighting each other and or even killed each other. I have no idea what that evidence would or could be. I've read papers where I've seen the title of the paper, I've read the abstract of the paper, and I've gone, oh, there's no way you're going to be able to argue this. I can't believe this has got through review. This is going to be dubious interpretation that hasn't been understood properly. Oh, actually, that's really quite convincing. Fair enough. So I don't know, but I think it's fairly safe to say that someone trying to sell a specimen, particularly when it's at a reserve of at least $6 million and they were hoping for a lot more, the fighting dinosaurs specimen sounds a lot more sexy than these two things happen to die next to each other specimen. It's alleged.
Yeah, my what I really want to get into, because a lot of people watching this might not have seen our wonderful T-Rex episode with the fantastic Chris Packham. Hi, but if you haven't, there is this huge thing about whether Nanotyrannus is an actual animal or not. Yeah. I just there's this, there's very little proof, and we don't know if we're just looking at teenage tyrannosaurs or Tyrannosaurus rexes, or if it's its own little species. And we did have a question, Dave. This came through on our email, which you can email the podcast, or you can get in touch through our Patreon page. But this is from a man from Connecticut, which is pretty good. Connecticut, that's like far away from Reading, where I live. This is from Andrew P, and he wants to ask you, Dave, do you think Tyrannosaurus rexes continued the evolutionary path of evolving larger heads and smaller arms? Because T-Rex seems to be the apex of this trend, and that the earliest rexes have smaller heads and longer arms than the rexes who were alive at the end of the Cretaceous. So can this be demonstrated through the fossil record that their arms are shrinking and their heads are expanding?
I don't know if that's a slightly badly written question or
no. It was me. It wasn't badly written. It was me reading it badly because
it kept saying rexes, which implies just T-Rex, which is just its own species, but then talks about evolution through the Cretaceous, which talks about a much bigger thing.
He said Tyrannosaurids quite a lot.
Aha, there we go. Right. So it's talking about so Tyrannosaurs plural, as in the bigger clade, so the equivalent of saying like the cat family or the dog family now. Yeah, there's absolutely a trend of arms shrinking and heads enlarging. The earlier ones in the Middle Jurassic, so about 100 million years before T-Rex, have relatively small heads, as in they have a normal sized head for their body, and they have really quite long arms. And yeah, there's this absolute shift. I would say that I don't think T-Rex is kind of the epitome of this. There's a thing called Tarbosaurus, which lived in Mongolia a little bit earlier, and Tarbosaurus has proportionally even smaller arms, at least according to Tom Holt. I haven't measured them. I don't think it's in the literature anywhere, but I totally trust Tom on this. Tom's like the Tyrannosaur guy of Tyrannosaur guys, and if he says Tarbosaurus has smaller arms, I'm buying what he says. But there was clearly a big trend here. Whether or not it would have continued if the Tyrannosaurs hadn't gone extinct, who knows? Because you just don't know what evolutionary selective pressures are there. You don't know what developmental limits there are. It's entirely possible that you can't actually shrink the arms much further than they already had for some reason.
Or get the head that big, because at some point it's going to nose forward, isn't it?
I mean, the big head does cause problems. It has a relatively short neck for precisely that reason, because you can't stick that much weight out in front without causing problems. If a bigger head wasn't any more advantage, then the head's not going to get any bigger. So that's really hard to say. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if it had, but I wouldn't have thought that if it did carry on, it would make a massive difference. You know, you get a little bit bigger head and a little smaller arms, but I don't think it's heading towards some Pac-Man like head and legs and no arms at all monstrosity. I doubt that would have happened.
Okay, so there isn't a, but there is this sort of general thing through the fossil record of the arms getting shorter and the heads getting bigger.
Absolutely. I mean, you got things like a thing called Guanlong. Guanlong's 3.5-4 meters long, maybe 1.5 meters to the top of the head when standing up. It's one of the earliest tyrannosaurs that we've got. Its arms are about the same size as those of T-Rex. Only a big T-Rex is
a bit
12
bigger.
Long, not 3. So you can see that in proportionally, therefore, those arms have shrunk enormously.
I've realised, Dave, I'm not a very evolved tyrannosaur.
Well, but so
got quite a small head and big arms.
Both Guanlong and T-Rex have arms about the same length as mine, and one of them wouldn't come up to my chin, and the other one, my head would be rubbing on its belly if I stood under it. So that shows you the proportional differences going between them.
Now, another very important question, Dave, is did any of the T-Rexes in question's arms look like this one, which has been doing the rounds? I don't know.
I've already said that to friends of mine who have chickens. So someone 3D printed these to put them on chickens.
Hang on, I'll get rid of that banner. Hang on. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they are. They're very special, and they annoy me because of no semilunate carpals, which I'll let you explain.
Yeah, so they've fallen for the classic Jurassic Park trap, which is that they've got the wrists flopping forwards, whereas they should go sideways like this. That thing has also got ludicrous muscles on it, and it looks almost like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I mean, it's It's not going to get much of a workout of T-Rex arm, is it?
No, and the proportions. Yeah, even better. I hadn't seen that photo. That one's even better. I like that. So the wrists are rotated. The wrists are orientated in the wrong direction. They look like the fingers are upside down.
Just doing that.
Well, no. So you can see that there's a longer first finger and a shorter second finger, and it should be a first finger and a longer second finger. So they've basically got the second finger first, and then the muscles on the upper arm are absolutely enormous, and the whole thing looks very human. It looks like someone has kind of copied a human arm and a human arm muscles to make that. And quite possible Arnie, and that's not a criticism of whoever did this, because whoever's done it for fun, they quite possibly have, it's a 3D print that they've done at home. It's quite possible that they had some Arnie or He-Man type model and they've just cut it off and done the fingers. I mean, I'm not going, how dare they produce a joke chicken T-Rex arm and not get the anatomy right. But if you're asking, is the anatomy right? No, it's got quite a few problems with it, but it's still really cool. I would definitely do that if I had chickens.
I think it's got arms, so it's just folded up behind it.
Yeah, you
correctly.
That's just obviously more fun. I mean, the obvious question is, why didn't he print it in white so it matched the chicken?
And it just looked like the chicken's got manky feathers. That's why. And also 3D printing, I imagine that there's a reason. It's like black ink, isn't it? You don't want to waste your colour ink.
Yeah, I think that's just how it comes out. But yeah, I do like I said, I saw them yesterday or the day before and immediately sent them to some friends of mine who keep chickens, who are certainly paleontologists. It's Mark Whitten and his wife Georgia.
I have another question. I mean, we feel free, if you're watching this, to ask us a question. Just leave a comment. I'll just check my notifications on this to make sure nobody's asked us.
Hello, but I didn't see any questions come in.
It's just a hello, but we've got several hearts and thumbs up, so that counts, doesn't it? Doesn't it? It's dinosaurs on a Sunday. What do you want to know? I'm going to ask you another question, which I want to know the link between chickens and modern dinosaurs and T-Rex. Now we know that if you cut the head off at some chickens, not all chickens, right, the right angle, they can live without a head. Yeah.
For quite a while.
T-Rex. Yeah. Like if you pipette them food, they'll live forever or something. Well, as long as a chicken would.
So I have heard the same thing. Would a T-Rex survive if you cut its head off? Who the hell knows? I think most birds don't respond the way that a chicken does to that, or a domesticated chicken, I should say. So I'd be surprised if that was true of dinosaurs.
I'm thinking not, because you said they've got short necks, and the point is the chicken's got quite a long neck, and if it's that bit of brain that's located quite far down its neck that keeps it alive with all of its basic stuff, I think.
I don't know enough about the mechanics of the neurobiology of Gallus domesticus, or quite where you need to hatchet it. I mean, if nothing else, there's a pragmatic issue here. Is like the cleaver you'd need to take the head off a T-Rex neatly, but may prove problematic for your plan.
It could be a juvenile T-Rex that you do it to.
Or a Nanotyrannus, whichever you prefer.
I mean, how big a T-Rex when they're first hatched? They're only chicken size anyway.
Well, so we don't have any T-Rex eggs, annoyingly. Assuming they're about as big as theropod eggs get, you're talking about something that's probably 30-ish centimeters long and maybe about 15, 20 across. So very sizable. And then you can wrap quite a lot of animal up in that, much bigger than that. I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Something T-Rex. I mean, maybe that cushion behind me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to hatch at over a meter long, I'm sure. Because remember, a lot of that is tail, and the tail will fold up, and the legs will fold up. You can get quite a lot of animal in an egg. Yeah, I'd imagine they're a metre or so at hatchling.
I don't think because chickens don't have the tails and birds don't have that tail, and it's just how, I suppose crocodiles would have their tails and be wrapped in a similar way.
Yeah, your sound's cutting out, by the way, but yeah, the certainly if you look at lizards and crocodiles and you look at when they hatch, and yeah, the tail's wrapped right around the body, and there's usually quite a lot. There's a lot more of them in there than you expect when you see them hatching out for the first time. Need to unmute. Oh, there we go.
Experimenting. Just bear with.
That's all right. It's not like we're live or anything. You're still muted.
I figured you were professional enough now you could cover, but apparently.
No.
I should have asked you a dinosaur question before it began. Come on. We'll get this down. It'll be fine.
Sorry. Well, I don't know what's going wrong on your end. I was hoping it was coming back. But anyway, returning to the original point about this, fighting dinosaur specimen, which is in the news, it is really interesting. It is potentially very important. Whatever the hell that Tyrannosaur is, it's one where it goes either way, because if it really is a Nanotyrannus, and I'm perfect, well, there's a whole separate argument about the exact taxonomy, the exact name. If this is a pygmy tyrannosaur of some description, that would be really cool, that we've actually finally got decent evidence of this, and then we can start discussing it and looking at it. That would be great. If it's another juvenile tyrannosaur, it's or Tyrannosaurus, it's of a particularly complete, particularly well preserved. That's really good news for us too. So it's a win-win, and I'm really not trying to be down on what this animal is or isn't. And it's going to tell us a lot either way. I'm just trying to say that there's a lot of hype around the, oh my God, they're fighting dinosaurs, and oh my God, it's Nanotyrannus. And I think caution is warranted. It's now gone to a public museum rather. So it is going to be studied by actual paleontologists who understand this kind of stuff and have no particularly vested interest in getting a particular answer. And even then, it will take time. There's, the Nanotyrannus T-Rex stuff has gone backwards and forwards in the literature. It's not like a paper comes out and it's immediately the answer. Raleigh has bought this specimen. It's theirs to work on as they see fit. When they've done their research and published their papers, they will let other people in, and I will go and I will have a look and I will draw my own conclusions. And maybe I'll disagree with what they say, and maybe I'll entirely agree with what they say. But yeah, I think there's a lot of hype.
This is what I don't understand. I mean, the stuff in the paper seems to be these dinosaurs have been sold to a museum, but the way that it's written about by the media is that it's, these are the first times we've ever seen these, and it's the first time, and it's really, they're definitely fighting, and it's definitely, and there's no mention of the Nanotyrannus. I mean, that's the thing. It's really quite, well, you're missing the whole point. Yeah.
So I mean, but even that, the 100% complete. Well, right. So there's a whole other thing to unpack there about what we mean by complete within fossils. This is something I've bitched about even in the scientific literature. People love writing, "Oh, this specimen is nearly complete," and then you take a look at it, and there's like about a third of it there. It's like, what? English may not be your first language, but nearly should not be under half. We do often talk about specimens that are complete or nearly complete because they've only got some bits missing. The end of the tail is missing, a couple of ribs are missing, a couple of teeth have fallen out. Maybe you've lost one arm, but if you have the other arm, you do know exactly what the arm looked like. And so I do understand that you don't necessarily have to have absolutely every single bone there to have a very, very, very good understanding of it, or even to have the entire anatomical knowledge. You could lose the left arm and the left leg and left side of the skull and still have absolutely every single bone known in terms of the pairs. But the idea that this is 100% when they haven't even finished preparing it yet, because this is why I said I'll be prepared to eat not just my hat but several hats. Because if it's going to be 100%, that means every bit of every bone is there. And yeah, the idea that the last tiny little bone on the tail hasn't gone, the idea that one rib hasn't had a bit broken off or one tooth hasn't fallen out.
They fell out anyway. That's not fair.
No, I know, but it's just that kind of, I understand that the museum wants to promote their amazing specimen that they spent a lot of money on, and the press want to promote it as a more exciting thing because they want you to read the story. But putting 100% in the title,
but this is
I bet
what
it
I don't get.
And I bet it's no more complete than Sue, which is like 87% or 90% by count of bones. It's probably about the same. In which case, it's not the first at all.
No, and what's really weird is that, this is North Carolina, and this is a big story in the metro which is based in London, UK.
Yeah.
And it's not like people can travel these days.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it seems so odd but what it does say, Dave, and what I'm really pleased about, as well as the 20 people watching, hello everybody,
20.
is that I know people really like dinosaurs. And that is the thing. Oh, we have a comment. So hang on. There we go. Dr. Holmes. Call him Dave, honestly. Oh.
Yeah, so
I'll read this out.
Okay.
You read it. Okay, I'll read it. Okay. Dr. Ho, do you have a prior collaboration with Dr. Zano in Raleigh as a way to examine the new specimens yourself, or will it be a significant period of time before you could examine it? So how do you go about taking a look at this?
Yeah, so Dr. Zano is Dr. Lindsay Zano, who is, I don't know what her official job title is, but she's a dinosaur paleontologist who is at Raleigh, and I know she's associated with the purchase of this specimen and their new dinosaur exhibit that they're putting together. I haven't collaborated with her before, I don't think we're on any papers together. I have written a chapter for a book that she is editing at the moment with Victoria Arbour, who did our Ankylosaur special, and Tom Holtz, who I mentioned. So Tom, Lindsay, and Victoria are the three editors of this book. I have written one of the chapters. There's about 20 people all writing book chapters for it. So I have at least a vague connection to her. I have, right, but I was saying she's not.
It's a small world. People who look up dead rock things.
That's also the point I'm kind of getting to. It's not like I have no idea who she is, but equally, it's not like we've published a whole bunch of research together. So how would I get to see it? And that's going to vary a lot. So some museums are extremely open, and some researchers within museums are extremely open about stuff that they are working on. So even though something is not ready for publication, and even though they would not want anyone else to publish on it before they have finished, they can be very open and let people see stuff and even take photographs and take notes and begin their own papers on the understanding that you wait for hours. That's the kind of most open and inclusive way you can do things. Some museums and researchers will even let you publish on some of that data, provided it doesn't impinge on their own data. So imagine a student was, say, doing a paper on just the length of all Tyrannosaur skulls ever. That one specimen that we've seen is not going to be a major component in terms of just the length of its skull that anyone is going to do with that kind of work that they're talking about. And therefore, they might even let a student come in and measure that skull and just take a couple of measurements and stick stuff up in their own research entirely independently, at least hypothetically. The extreme side of things, which does happen with some places, extreme other end, is that's our specimen, we're working on it, and until we have done absolutely everything we ever want to do on it, no one else is looking at it. I think that's an acceptable position, and particularly perhaps more so when you spent this much money and it's such a centerpiece of a new exhibit, but it is not particularly helpful from a collaboration point of view. It can slow up the science. There are, and this is down to not just museums, but even individual researchers and individual curators working on specimens. I've worked in an institute for a number of years where my direct supervisor would just about let anyone see anything and look at and even start working on stuff that he was still working on. And the guy in the room, literally 2 doors down in the corridor, wouldn't let me see stuff that had already been published and illustrated in the scientific literature. And I was working in the institute, not some weird outside. So
are you renowned for being clumsy or something? What? Why?
No, I'm not actually. I like to think I've got a decent reputation for being collaborative and kind of playing by the rules and not, not letting secrets slip that I shouldn't. I've seen loads of stuff that I can't talk about, and I don't talk about it. But in going back to the original question here about specimen at Raleigh, I don't know Dr. Zano well enough to ask that kind of question. If I happen to be in North Carolina and going to the museum anyway, I would absolutely ask if I was allowed to see it, but I'm not going to make a special trip over there to try and see it. And I'm not going to send her an email going, so you want someone who does quite a lot on theropod behavior and competition and fighting and combat and prey selection to look at this specimen? Would you like me to look at it? Because that's not how I work. So if they know what I do, they know me. If they think I'm going to help out the paper,
it's very cool. It's very cool. I wouldn't see as a stand-up comedian. In order to get stuff that you want, you have to beg. You can't be you can't just be a wallflower. You can't just wait for the boys to ask you out.
I know. So that it swings and roundabouts, because I know of people who have. Let's say, ended up collaborating on papers, and I'm really not sure why, because I think they largely asked, or even somewhat forced their way in. And I've probably missed out on stuff because I should have been pushier when I could have helped out. But equally, most paleontologists that I know have more papers and projects going on than they know what to do with. So starting yet another project with someone else. Would we consider having her on to discuss the specimens? Absolutely.
I would. Yeah.
I am sure they're not going to want to talk about it until, why
could we get a drunk? Could we?
You got to think about it from their point of view. The museum's just dropped $6 million on this, and they're spending something like 15 or 17 on the new exhibit. They are not going to come on our podcast and reveal all the secrets that they want people to come and spend money to go through their doors 5 years from now.
However, they could reveal some. Doesn't have to be all, Dr. Zano. It doesn't have to be all. Just a couple little secrets, just to drop it exclusively with Terrible Lizards, and we'll make sure that we get it out to our listeners first. That would be amazing. And you could argue with her. Cool. Well, Dave, I think we've covered everything that we could possibly cover. Just a reminder to all of you guys that we are currently on our break at the moment. I'm meant to be writing a book, and Dave is meant to be recovering because he's not particularly well at the moment. Wish him well. Look at him. He's lost the use of razors. That's how to. But yeah,
and a gesture, but I believe we're on YouTube. So.
No, we're on YouTube, so don't do that. We've got to be polite. But yeah, so I'm currently working on a new bit of bonus material, which should be out on Patreon hopefully next week. And we're going to put out a little bonus episode for the non-patrons, because we love you guys too. If you do like dinosaurs, please tell people about our podcast. It's called Terrible Lizards, and I edit it, and my earphones don't die halfway through each episode. So if you want to, please do like and share and subscribe to that. Otherwise, we will see you again when there's some more dinosaur news that comes up and we fancy a chat and it's Sunday, or it's, we can.
Well,
but thank you.
People bombing us by telling us things that we already knew about 3 days ago.
Yeah. I mean, but shh. Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, send us your dinosaur news that excites you and we will talk about it. But until then, should we say rawr?
Rawr.